Welcome back to another episode of Offbeat Adventures. We're standing here on the grade of the former Grand Trunk Pacific Railway and later Canadian National Railways-Raith Subdivision. We are just to the west of the community of Raith, Ontario, which is northwest of the city of Thunder Bay. We are just close to the Canadian Pacific Kansas City line, which you can see a passing westbound intermodal that has just sort of gone by us. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm trying to talk extra loud. I think the middle engine is coming up here because it's getting even louder. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be working our way from this point here. We haven't yet done this section at the time of the filming here, but we will be coming back and doing it. This is the fall of 2024. We're probably going to come back in the spring of 2025 to do this section here. So we're going to be working our way just over 4 miles to the west towards the next road crossing. So there's a road crossing up there called Lab Lake Road, and then there's another one coming up this way called Dog Lake Road. You'll notice I don't have a bike. That's because I ditched it further back, and I'll explain all of that momentarily. So again, you can still see this passing Canadian Pacific Kansas City train. This is the CPKC's Kaministiquia subdivision. Runs from Thunder Bay to Ignace, about 147 miles. So I got a lot of things to talk about here. We got to get going with our first point of interest right here, right off the hop. Oh, it didn't have a middle engine. It has a rear engine, a Kansas City Southern locomotive that looks like it needs a paint job. Our first point of interest here is we have this bridge crossing. Now, what's interesting is this grade, basically from everything from Dog Lake Junction this way, is owned by a forest management company called Wagner. You do need a permit to go on here. What's interesting is all of the other sections are basically road accessible. You can drive on them, except for this one. And I don't know the reason for that. But basically, I think it might have something to do with the bridge that's coming up ahead of us here. I don't know the exact length of this trestle here. I will get you I'll get you a measurement, because now that I've basically pinned the other side, I've got this side. We were here in the summer, and basically I kind of took a look at this side. I didn't cross the bridge, but we are going to do that momentarily here. So let me get this tucked away here. This is probably one of the sketchier bridges that I've crossed, and you're going to see why. You'll also notice that behind the Canadian Pacific line, you'll also see the Trans-Canada Highway, and so this is a portion of the Trans-Canada Highway through this part of the province. This is Highway 17, which is kind of the northern route. So basically runs from Thunder Bay. The highway splits just to the east at Chappaqua. Highway 11 goes to the south. Highway 17 continues this way. So it's going to go up to Uppsala, Ignace, Dryden, Kenora, and then on to Winnipeg. All right, so we have this wood trestle here. Seen way better days. Especially this middle section is particularly sketchy. You can see some of the timbers are okay, but you can see some are gone. Some have been, there's just regular ties that have been thrown in here, probably by people at some point. And then here it gets really bad here in the middle. This is where it gets really sketchy. And if you know anything, and you watch these videos regularly, you know I'm not particularly good with heights. Now, this is not particularly high, but the sketchiness of it kind of gives me a little bit of anxiety here. You can see that there are still some spikes in here. I'm continuing to talk loud because the traffic on the road is probably helping to drown out a little bit of the audio. So again, I don't know particularly how long this is. It's got to be over 50 feet at least, maybe a little bit more. Again, I'll have a measurement on the video itself. So when we get to this side here, you'll notice that there's still a few ties that are in place. You can kind of see this side. Ooh. You can kind of see this side, which is kind of the north side. The height of the structure is probably 6-7 feet, just judging by that. We'll go take a look on this side here. Might be able to see a little bit better here. Again, it is October. It's the, what day is it today? 26th of October. We're right towards the tail end of hiking season here, because pretty soon we might be getting some you know, the precipitation maybe turning to snow. So here you can see basically the structure itself. We basically have 1, 2, 3, 4 bents in the creek itself. So this is Raith Creek, which I don't know if it's named after which came first, the station that's further to the east. So Raith Station is just back there. So I don't know if what came first, Raith Station or the creek. Anyway, so the creek flows, and basically we're going to pick it up again. We're going to pick it up over there, and we're going to basically cross the creek once again. So I think the creek goes on that side, and then it'll cross again over here. So again, this particular trestle here, not in awesome shape. Okay, let's pause momentarily here, and then we'll continue working our way west. All right, so before we get into our history lesson, let me talk a little bit about why I don't have a bike with me right now. So you'll notice this little first part of the grade looks pretty darn good, right? So when I was figuring out the hikes for this railway line and what sections I was going to do, this is actually one of the last bikeable sections for potentially bikeable sections for a while, because once we get to where our destination is going to be, essentially the next road access from Dog Lake Road, where we're going to the next road access is up by Uppsala. So there's a long section there where we can't get into, so I can't possibly bike them. All right, in any case, so when I was here in July, we basically came to the bridge. I took a look, I saw the grade here, and I'm like, oh, that looks pretty good. Then I studied the aerial photographs, the satellite photographs, and I took a look at them, and I was like, oh, it doesn't look too bad. It looks fairly open. The aerial, or the satellite photographs, are from 2020. Well, I was in for a little bit of a rude awakening, because the first section up until basically where Dog Lake Road is, it was okay, right, because it's road travelable. And then as you started sort of coming to the east, it started getting grown in, and I thought, okay, maybe this first little piece is a little grown in. Well, basically the whole thing is grown in. This little section here is open just up ahead, and then it just grows in. And again, you can tell some of that is new growth that has come in since the last satellite photo was done. So unfortunately, I sort of lugged the bike about 4 kilometers, and then finally I said, okay, enough. I can't drag the bike anymore, because it was just becoming ridiculous trying to maneuver it around all of the brush and everything like that. And the problem is that when I hook up with the bike again, I'm going to have to sort of drag it all the way back. Kind of a cool breeze. It was -1 when we started the hike, and out in the open here, there's a bit of a cool breeze. Now the only problem with this is that I'm not really equipped, or more like dressed, to do kind of a walking hike. If I would have known that I would have just had to walk this thing, I would have worn different pants. I'm kind of wearing pants that I used to bike with, because my hiking pants are a little bit too difficult to bike in. And I've got my biking helmet on. I have a head strap for the camera that I can use when I walk. That's sitting back in the truck. So it's not bad here, but once we get into the grown-in sections, it's going to get a little bit harder to maneuver with the camera on the bike helmet, because it sticks up, and I'm worried that's going to catch on things. And we also had a pretty heavy frost last night, and so everything is wet, right? Like, I've dried out a little bit now that I've kind of walked out here in the open, but once we get in there, there's water dripping down off the trees, and yeah, not particularly awesome. And then I figured I could do this hike on a sunny day because I figured it was going to be open and we didn't have to worry about, you know, the light and the dark from the trees and stuff like that. Well, that's a problem too. Okay, let's, now that I've got all that out of the way, let's do our history lesson here. And as we get into the brush. So this line was constructed by the Grand Trunk Pacific Railway between 1905 and 1908. This branch line, because it was a branch, it wasn't part of the main line, was going to be part of an attempt by the Grand Trunk Company to construct a second transcontinental railway across Canada. The Grand Trunk Company was, the parent company was one of the oldest railway companies in Canada, dating back to the 1850s. Now, while Grand Trunk wanted to kind of build, or had some aspirations of building the second transcontinental railway, they weren't particularly keen on doing it, because obviously building a railway across Canada, as was the experience by the Canadian Pacific Line, or the Canadian Pacific Kansas City, it's so awkward saying that, it feels weird. As was their experience, it wasn't going to be particularly easy, and it wasn't going to be particularly cheap. So basically the company was trying to get some help from the Canadian government, and things went kind of back and forth for a long time. There's places where I have to kind of walk off the grade. I'm gonna have to do this a lot because it is so grown in on the grade, these alders and things. It's very, very difficult to walk down the center of the grade sometimes. So the company, Grand Trunk, went back and forth with the Canadian government for a lot of years, right? A lot of negotiations, a lot of discussions about the construction of this line. And so finally they came up with an agreement. And so construction started on this line in 1905, and there was another section by Winnipeg that started as well. So the plan is that the Grand Trunk was going to build the western portion of this transcontinental line, everything from Winnipeg west to Prince Rupert, under the name Grand Trunk Pacific. And then the Canadian government was going to build the eastern portion of the transcontinental line, everything from Winnipeg to New Brunswick, under the name National Transcontinental. So I think I got that right. Western part, Grand Trunk Pacific. Sorry, I'm just like trying to navigate my way, and I'm not, you know, I'm trying to multitask here, my brain here. So everything Winnipeg West, Grand Trunk Pacific, everything Winnipeg East is going to be the National Transcontinental. Now, this line was a bit of an anomaly because it was a Grand Trunk Pacific line, but it actually connected with the National Transcontinental because it actually hooked in to the east of Winnipeg. And so the junction point was going to be a place that became known as Superior Junction. The name was very indicative of its role. So basically, and Superior Junction today is just east of the modern community of Sioux Lookout. And so the purpose of this line was to give the system access to Lake Superior, right? So basically, because it ran so far north, it was going to allow them to bring particularly things like grain to Lake Superior to facilitate transportation. So again, construction lasted from 1905 until 1908. Now, once the whole system got built, a problem popped up, and that problem was that Grand Trunk backed out of the agreement to operate the entire network. They basically told the Canadian government, we're not going to operate the eastern portion. We're just going to operate our western portion. So the Canadian government's got a problem because they've got a railway line that they have nobody to operate. And so what they ended up doing was they ended up creating their own railway company to do that. So they created the Canadian Government Railways. Now, because this line, again, was a Grand Trunk line, but it connected to the NTR, what they did was the Canadian Government Railways leased this line from Grand Trunk Pacific, and so the name changed. So it had originally been the Lake Superior branch, or the Lake Superior division of Grand Trunk Pacific, and it became the Fort William and Raith subdivisions, this part being the Raith subdivisions because we were to the west, of Raith, of Canadian Government Railways. So we got a little open spot here. And the line operated as such until late 1918, when the Canadian government amalgamated the Canadian Government Railways with another bankrupt line, which was the Canadian Northern Railway, and that merger produced Canadian National Railways. So in January of 1919, the name of this line changed. It became the Fort William and Raith Subdivisions of Canadian National Railways, and then later that year the name changed again, became the Lake Superior Subdivision. Now, around that time, Canadian National began looking at their lines in this area, and they realized they needed to do some consolidation. For the first 30 miles out of Thunder Bay, they basically had two lines that paralleled each other. They had the former Canadian Northern Railway line, which now was the Kaministiquia subdivision, and they had the former Grand Trunk Pacific line. So what they were going to do was they were going to double the Kaministiquia subdivision and basically abandon the first 30 miles of the former Grand Trunk line. And so in 1922, the name of this line changed again. It became the Graham subdivision. And in 1924, the name changed again. The line was split into two lines. It was split into the Crest and the Graham subdivision. And that was done in preparation because the Crest subdivision was the part of the line that was going to be abandoned. Then in 1925, the names of the lines were changed again. So it was split into three: the Crest, the Raith, and the Corn subdivisions. And that spring, the Crest subdivision was abandoned, and so the line continued as the Raith and the the Raith and the Corn subdivision until 1931, when it reverted back to being called the Graham subdivision. And then the line continued to operate until 1994, when it was abandoned by CN, and the rails were pulled up shortly thereafter. Okay, so we've done a lot of talking, very convoluted story. You can see how things are getting grown in. It's going to get worse. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to pause momentarily, and then we're going to continue our journey.